note that the session's going to be recorded. If you wanted to sort of review at a later date and think, what was it the old English guys said? What we'll do is I'm going to run through the presentation. If we can hold all questions until the end, I've allowed a short piece of time at the end for some questions. Of course, for a lot of you, English isn't your first language. So if there are terms that I use that you don't understand, drop a note into the chat and we can cover some of that towards the end. So let's begin. Thank you everybody for turning up today. We've currently got more than 20 on the line. What I'm going to talk to you today is a growing area for a lot of organizations and countries in the world about how cyber incidents. Normally, a lot of incident response processes are very, very structured and fixed for the IT world. How do you do it in OT? Do a lot of you understand what OT even is? A lot of organizations are talking about IT, OT convergence, and IT and OT are seamlessly coming together. The reality is, for a lot of organizations, it's more of a collision rather than a convergence. So we need to make sure that two different things occur. One is we're talking the same language, and I don't mean English, but IT, OT, physical security, they might all use the same acronym, but they mean something totally different. And it's exactly the same with the word, for example, incident. If you are an IT organization that utilizes ITIL for service delivery, the IT infrastructure library, for service delivery, what you consider to be an incident, the OT world may not. But the key part here, of course, is understanding what do we mean by a cyber incident in OT and what do we mean by leading one. 10 years ago, people were saying to me, really, cyber in OT? It's very few and far between. Yes, okay, everybody's heard of Stuxnet and everybody's heard of the Iranian response, Shamoon. But actually, do you know what? Not a lot of people have. So people were sitting there going, we're good, we're air gapped. And of course, the reality is air gaps don't exist anymore. There's a really very, very good paper written by a gentleman called Eric Byers. And he wrote the paper and he called it Air Gaps and Unicorns. Do they really exist? And he discusses and proves that air gaps, traditionally air gaps, don't exist anymore. Now, when I go and talk to boards and the C-suite, they say, do you know what? We get cyber. But back in the day in OT, cyber was this big. Now it's this big. So where do we begin? I always turn around and start with this. Three things. Asset inventory and configuration. You need to know and have a good understanding of what you have, what it's running, so the version, where it is, its physical location, and what's connected to it. You cannot secure what you don't know. So have a good understanding of your assets. Now, in IT, that's relatively easy to do because you can fire a tool out and it comes back with a whole bunch of responses from interconnected devices. How do you do it in OT? You can't use e-discovery tools asset discovery tools, because a lot of them will break the system. There are tools that are designed for this purpose. One of them is called Grass Marlin, which is actually not a bad tool. However, it will only identify what is there and running at the time. It won't identify something that's on the network but not running at the time. So have a good understanding of inventory and configuration for your assets. Second point, staff awareness and training. The days are long gone where people turn around and go, It's not my job. It's the IT security team's job. Now, particularly in OT, the engineers and the operators need to be reminded that everybody has a part to play. Because in the process control systems and the industrial control systems that they are running, they are the experts. We might bring in IT people to help run the incident if necessary, but they're the experts in their systems. So we need to have staff awareness and training. And from an educational perspective, awareness and training are two different things, right? So if someone says to you, oh, I've just done some awareness training, the answer is no, you haven't. You've either done awareness, which is addressing behavioral risk, or training, which is addressing and upskilling so that you can implement those new skills in the way that you work. The third part and the point of talking about today, you need to start with a position of incident response. From that very first decision, at the end of the day, the bad guys are not going to wait for you to be ready. They're not going to be sitting there going, oh, come on, Tim, have you run that program yet? Okay, ready? Okay, now we're going to attack you. They're going to do it day one, hour one, because you're not ready, because you won't identify that it's going on, and you've probably done almost no preparation. That's when they're going to come for you. So why me? Why am I the guy stood here or sat here talking to you? I've been doing this a long time. I haven't been doing it my whole career. I started life in the military in the UK military as a military policeman. So very much started in the physical security world. Through my career, I've gone through intelligence cycles. I've done some other stuff. And I ended up in the UK government and then ended up in BP as the security capability lead. I now run my own company. I'm the CEO of a company called Cyber, and I'm a certified incident security trainer and incident commander. I'm a senior member of the International Society of Automation. I'm a member of the World Institute for Nuclear Security, that is civil nuclear. Am I an expert? That depends. You know, the biggest thing in OT cybersecurity is that phrase. It depends. It depends on the system. It depends on my depth of knowledge on that system. What it does mean across all of my career and 45 years, I can see the breadth of the subject. It isn't a deep technical thing now. It's a business thing. So we need to make sure that as security professionals, we speak the language of business or OT or engineering, rather than try and hit them with words about security that they're going to go, what? So that's one of the things that I do. Happy to discuss outside of this, and by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards. Let's have a quick start with some of the terminology. Incident response. Sounds good. IRT, incident response team, IRM, incident response manager. We'll come back to that point in a minute. TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. So the things that the bad guys are showing us that they do to run through some of these attacks. Indicators of compromise, or IOCs, are things that have been identified that show us something's going on, that enable us to put defensive measures in place. We're talking about industrial control systems, or you might also hear the term IACS, industrial automation control systems. And most of you probably understand the term either CERT or CSERT, an emergency response team or an incident response team. Unless you work in OT, you're unlikely to hear the terms DAT or COOP, so damage assessment team, the group that goes in first and says, what's broken, what do I need to fix, what do I need to shut down before it all goes bang? And obviously COOP, continuity of operations or operations plans. And then AAR, after action report. We'll talk about some of these during the course of the next few minutes. So what's an incident? That's a key part here, isn't it? We always talk about incident response and leading an incident, but what's an incident? FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency in America, have split it into two groups, natural and man-made, and we've split natural into weather-based incidents and geophysical-based incidents, hurricanes, earthquakes, etc. In the man-made aspect, it used to be that cyber was a consideration for things like air crash, industrial accidents, terrorist attacks, etc. After things like WannaCry, NotPetya, those type of global incidents, cyber attack has now become identified as a thing that stands alone. If you remember earlier this year, there was a cyber attack on the grid in Spain that shut down the grid for several days in the whole of Spain and Portugal and southern France as well. So cyber attacks now have the ability to do lots and lots of damage and impact millions of people and cost a lot of money. I was saying to Frederick before I joined the call, I was in BP at the time of the Gulf of Mexico incident. The final cost to BP, bearing in mind there were 5 main companies involved, BP was the major company. The final cost to BP was over $60 billion. Some of these incidents will cripple companies. So it's not just a case of the CEO's not got his email again. An OT incident in a large oil and gas company could kill the company. Look at Maersk Oil and Gas during NotPetya. It ended up with that being sold off. Jaguar Land Rover in the UK in the past month has had £200 million worth of on-site damage on Jaguar Land Rover sites, and it's caused approximately £1 billion worth of knock-on effects and damage within the JLR supply chain. So these can become massive incidents really, really quickly, which is why the asset part that I was talking about just now is most important. So what's OT? You know, I've called this leading an OT incident. What do we mean by the term OT? In the US, they have a thing called NIST. If you already know the term NIST, forgive me, I'll explain it to people that might not be so familiar. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, and it is a group of organizations that are bringing together standards and procedures to help businesses in America. They have a thing called the SP Library, which is special publications, and 800-82 revision 3 is securing an OT environment. And it states that OT is a set of programmable systems or devices that interact with the physical environment or manage devices that interact with the physical environment. So back in the old days, an industrial control system would be a purely mechanical process. Then somebody said, hey, I've got the worst thing ever, isn't it? I've got a good idea. So they overlaid automation to the mechanical process. Now, OT as an environment includes industrial control systems. We used to hear the term ICS, but of course now, not all control systems are industrial. Building management systems, health systems, particularly the wireless controlled things like pacemakers. In the true definition of the term, they are a control system. Fire and gas control systems, physical access. So now you've got control systems, not only in OT, you've got them in IT and in physical security as well. And there's many, many areas of interchange that's growing, as well as lots of IT influence in the top layers of the architecture of an OT environment. An OT environment may also contain several different types industrial control systems. It might have a distributed control system. It might have a SCADA system. It might have a safety instrumented system as well, all within one environment. The other thing, of course, to remember is some of these systems are very, very old. I was on a site last year that was still running part of their system utilizing MS-DOS. You are not going to find many people under 30 who know MS-DOS or programming COBOL or Fortran or know what a modem does. So if you're working in OT, you've got to take a step back in time. An industrial control system, a collection of personnel, hardware, software, and policies that's involved in the running of the operational process or the industrial process. And the interesting thing here is it can affect or influence its safe, secure, and reliable operation. Well, do you know what? In a lot of languages, safety and security is actually the same word. So now we've got to be crystal clear on what it is we are talking about and what we're trying to do to the system. On the screen, you can see a screenshot there of a major NotPetya intrusion, where it took out a large supermarket chain. They had people just pushing trolleys out of the door because they couldn't pay for it. So the next part of the conversation, of course, is, as I say, I titled this Leading an OT Incident. What's the difference between leadership and management? Now, this is a critical question because a lot of times, and I'm sure you all know people like this, you have people in very, very senior positions that don't actually understand the difference between the two, or worse, don't actually do either. It is really important that we understand, what do we mean by leadership? What do we mean by management? And when does one take precedence over the other? If you have a major OT incident kicking off, the person that leads the incident may well not be the senior person in the room. You might have way more senior managers who are not necessarily going to be good leaders, and they need to be mindful enough to step back, let the leader do their job, and then step back in when it's resolved. The National Society for Leadership and Success, it sounds all very, very posh. They break it down like this: leaders empower their teams and have a vision or a direction, whilst managers enact a plan and are focused on hitting organizational goals. Now, of course, a lot of people do both, and it depends upon the situation that they are in. But it takes a very skillful person to make that distinction between the different ways that they work. Where it does work well, of course, is things like security, law enforcement, and the military. A security leader is people that have a combined set of knowledge and skills and be able to understand what the combination of those two things to bring together to deliver tasks. They inspire, they empower, they deliver things like a security strategy. They put things together, they bring it all together, and they understand security in its business form of risk. They also understand security culture. Now, one of the key things that I say often in OT is security is a culture change. It has to be. It's not a case of you're going to go along and do an excellent 5-day course at Readynez and go, we're secure now. Because of course that's not going to be the case. They are excellent courses, but you then have to build it into the way that you work. Building a security culture is going to take 5 years minimum. We did it 35 years ago. We call it safety. And now everybody walks around a plant with hard toe boots, hard hat, PPE on. So we're doing it and we live it every day. That's the place that you want to get cyber to. In terms of the culture, it's got to include security awareness, and awareness is in two different phases. One is very much about understanding the primary message. Let me tell you about this because it's something you probably don't realize. And then every 6 to 12 months, you reinforce that by going through it again. You deliver improvements and updates. You run good work cycles to be able to then prove that you've made a difference. Change management and management of change is key as a security leader. Here's where it differs slightly in OT, because you do need to understand the modern world, particularly, you all know that in IT security, the word of the day is AI. Well, the two letters of the day, AI. But what does that mean to OT? Does it help you at all? It may do. It may help you understand, how can I take this modern system and better secure the system that's still running Windows 3.1 or NT or early Unix. It will also help you understand to design, how do I look at this OT system? Again, I'm working on a rail company at the moment, and they have a rail line that is still 47% analog. Digital transformation programs won't touch the analog. So we need to make sure that we can build all of this in whilst keeping an eye on what are we not changing. I mentioned before I was working on a site that was still running MS-DOS. They have no plans to update that for at least 5 years, because in the engineering space, it is doing exactly what it is designed to do. More importantly, from a risk perspective, when I questioned them about it and said, surely this is a really, really big risk, their answer was, maybe. The issue that they had wasn't that it was an old system running MS-DOS. The issue was twofold. One, they were down to one person that could effectively maintain the system, and that person was going to retire within 12 months, and they had no plan to replace that person, yet the system wasn't changing. So then we had to look at skills required for legacy systems as part of your succession planning. The other issue that they had, and one of the leaders picked it out to me and said, this is the key thing here. This system to replace would be about $75 million. We don't have a spare $75 million. The risk is that this system has been running continuously 24/7, never been patched, never been updated, and it has been running for 26 years. Now, obviously, then I took a breath and went, oh. Part of the problem they foresaw wasn't necessarily the system or the engineer retiring. The vendor who provided them with the system had gone out of business. And so from their risk perspective, if they switched it off to update it or patch it or try and make some improvements to it, if they switched it off and couldn't switch it back on, because the vendor doesn't exist anymore, they had nowhere to go for help. So they actually saw the risk as being switching it off rather than the fact that it's been on for 26 years. So understanding all of this technological stuff is really, really important. In OT, you're going to have the IT people come along and go, I've got the latest patch for this. In OT, they might turn around and go, okay, thanks. But actually, I'm not going to apply the patch. I'm going to do some degree of compensating controls that will have the least impact on the process. I might switch off a port. I might switch off a service. I might dial down some stuff. but I don't necessarily at this moment need to apply the patch. So often you'll find that they'll have a library of patches available, but they don't do them. What makes a good security leader? So the gentleman in the picture there, Colin Powell, when I was in Gulf War One, he was the boss, or the ultimate boss. A great guy, well liked by his soldiers. And his view was, if people stop talking to me, you've stopped leading them, because they don't believe that you can help them. A good leader communicates clearly. They are clearly passionate about what they do, but they don't believe that they're the experts in everything. You have to keep an open mind and learn stuff. I'm 63 years old. I learn stuff every day, and I keep learning stuff. You try and be positive all the time. There's nothing worse than somebody going, "Hey, Tim, I really need help here." Yeah, whatever. I'll do it in a minute. You've got to be positive about it. You've got to encourage it and respect everybody. Whether you like their opinion or not, it doesn't really matter. You have to build those relationships. And as a military policeman in the UK, my old core motto was exemplo tucamus, lead by example. So it really is important that you lead by showing people, this is what I do. If I get up, I lock my desktop. I cannot have a go at somebody saying, cool, Bob, that's the 10th time this week that I've seen you just wander away from your screen. But if he says, yeah, but you're the team boss and you don't do it, you failed. So you lead by example. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it all. An OT incident. What does that mean? Let alone, what does incident response mean? The issue that you've got with some of this stuff is systems, and particularly some of the protocols, are very old and may be proprietary or bespoke. Early systems had no consideration of security built in. If you have a system that is using Modbus, which is one of the industrial protocols, or the common industrial protocol suite, Modbus was written in 1979 and has no security in it at all, because at that time, security wasn't a consideration. In OT terms, everything will come under the banner of, does it satisfy safety requirements first? Because that's the key thing. You, as a forensic person, will go along and say, I need to take, for evidential purposes, volatile data. If it's going to slow them down, shutting the system down effectively and in a timely way, they'll say, I understand exactly why you want to do it, but the answer is no. So safety is always the number one consideration. And because of that, you might find that newer tools, scripts, PowerShell in particular, might not actually be used right down in the depths of the architecture. So when you've turned around and go, I'm going to do a vulnerability exercise, I want to find Nessus at the system, the engineers are going to go, no, because I know this stuff is so old, it's going to knock it over. Antivirus is exactly the same. It's one of the key areas where, you know what, there aren't much signatures out there now for XP and older. So understanding the limitations of what level of help you can actually get from vendors, if the vendor is still around, is key. You have field devices, and the pipeline there is part of the pipeline out of Baku. This runs nearly 1,000 kilometers. You have field devices at certain points along those lines, but because they're in hostile locations, as in environmental hostile rather than physical defense hostile, but they're certainly very remote, because they're transmitting signals probably via wireless or GSM, they don't necessarily capture a whole bunch of logs for people to analyze. So be aware of some of these challenges in an OT network, and how they might change the way that you do incident response. Preparation is key. We often say that you've got the 6 stages in traditional incident response: preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. Preparation is the first stage. This is the time when you have time. Use it wisely and don't just run away going, well, it's okay, I'll just learn it from other people. Your preparation may well be driven by something happening before, and you don't want it to happen again. Now, it might not be to you, but a lot of industrial sectors are getting together and giving each other some helpful advice about what's happened to them so that it doesn't happen to you. Lessons learned might not have come from a previous incident in your organization. And in the OT world, to date, there's only been 9 identified purely OT malware, 9 since 2007. But they've been incredibly destructive. If you look at Trisis in 2017, Trisis was a response from a certain group that took out the safety system first. So the first stage of the attack was get onto the system. The second stage was disable the safety system. So where the operators were sitting there going, it's okay, the safety system will kick in soon, should have kicked in by now. And of course, the answer was it didn't. Globally, that was a game changer, because people then turned around and said, hang on a minute, I've got that safety system. Does that mean I'm vulnerable too? And it made people completely rethink the concept of OT incident response. Consequently, a lot of the regulators and the competent authorities got involved and said, right, we're going to bring in some new things, and we require you to have an incident response plan. Now, I know a lot of organizations that sit there and go, oh, we've got one. It's like, no, that's your company's business continuity plan, and that doesn't even refer to the OT part of the business. And traditionally, what's been happening is the IT guys have got very, very good at incident response because that's part of what they do. You have SOCs, security operations centers, in place. They get lots of cyber threat intelligence in. And the IT space is a good space. The problem is they're securing the business. What they're not securing is the reason why you are a business. There's no point in securing email on one of these vessels. In the picture, this is what's known as an FPSO, a floating production, storage and offloading platform. These things are roughly between $2.5 and $7 billion each. This particular company has 38 of them. So a major capital investment. The last thing they're going to be sitting there going, how do I secure email when they have massive control systems on board? This vessel doesn't even have an engine. It's towed into place. So no engine, no propeller. But these things are towed into place and are kept there for 25 years minimum. This is why they do, the latest versions of these are going out. The latest version went out early this year, Windows 7, because they don't have time to make major changes. The last part, of course, is it really is important that we don't do it just to satisfy compliance. The managers that turn around and go, well, what do you need to tick the box, is not thinking at it from a business risk perspective. So start with the basics. You have a strategy. You understand the process of incident response. You build a team. Who needs to be in your team? What do they need to function? So hardware, software, supply chain assistance. Do you have multiple sites where you can actually pre-position resources if they need them. If that's the case, you need to be in a position as the leader of the incident that you have the assurance that this stuff has been regularly checked, updated, renewed if it's going down, plenty of batteries involved if necessary. You might have legal agreements in place for sharing. So as an example, if you are Scottish Power covering the west coast of Scotland, and SSE, Scottish and Southern Electric, who cover the east coast of Scotland, they have an agreement in place that says if we get hit and you don't, and we need people quickly, they will send resources because it's the same sector, the same style of system. So power generation, power transmission, they do the same thing. They're just run by different companies. They have an agreement in place called mutual aid. They will help each other if they can. And then train and train and train again. Remember, a tabletop exercise will only, no, that's not true. A tabletop exercise should only test the plan. It should not be testing the people, right? Live play exercises test the people. A tabletop exercise is there to run through the plan to make sure that the plan works. But how do you do one of those if you're on a vessel like that in the middle of the Southern Atlantic, 200 miles off the coast of Angola, in ultra deep water, so several thousand feet of water? To do this, in OT, we use a thing called the Planning P, OT Incident Response. The Planning P grew out of the US Coast Guard systems, but actually it was designed along the lines of the US National Incident Management System, which was originally designed to help different organizations come together to the same purpose, particularly around things like wildfires, where the fire becomes so big it crosses a state boundary. So you might have different states actually having different initiatives. In the UK, we also have a thing called JESIP, the Joint, it's a long thing now, the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Program. Nobody remembers that. That's why it's called JESIP. But the idea there is it helps people turn around and say, this is when we come together. And at certain stages, the police take the lead and they provide the incident commander. As it shifts, there might be a major fire, then the fire officer will take the incident commander role. So the incident commander doesn't necessarily need to be fixed, but you do need to have them. The Planning P helps you with this. You have the initial response, and then you have the round bit at the top, which is the cycle of activity. It gives you a set of meetings and forms and worksheets and allows you to plan stuff in a cycle of activity, normally either 6 or 12 hours, so that everybody understands what they're doing and why. You have these basic team areas around operations, planning, logistics, admin and finance. It's all very well me as the incident commander saying, I need 5 additional engineers because of this. Where does that money come from? How do I, as the incident commander, get it? Because I shouldn't be going and doing it. I should be able to turn around to operations or planning and say, go and get me some. Logistics, go and get me 10 new laptops because these are all fried. Public information officer, they're the people that speak outside of the company. They speak to the press. They speak to the other public. Following the company communication guidelines. They all work under this concept of a unified commander, and that's physical and cyber. And then the different team areas, the different teams, operations, planning, etc., will have the experts they need dependent upon the type of incident that it is. So these may well flex as the incident grows and then recedes, but you only have one incident commander. One of the key things you need to consider is, what do I need to record? How do I record it? Are we talking about now, rather than just notes, are we allowed to take pictures? Are we allowed to have body-worn cameras? What does digital evidence actually look like in this? Can I seize things for evidence later? And then understanding the control system aspects. What's the impact on the control system? Is there a tolerance level that cannot be gone past? Can I record, for example, as I mentioned before, volatile data? Obviously, volatile data is lost when the system is shut down. Where would I record the volatile data from on a control system that was still running Windows XP? And it's almost like but you need to understand, how do you record the data? Can it be done digitally? Can it be done voice? Does it have to be forms? Lots of things to consider, and this should all be decided in the preparation phase. So what does it take to be an incident commander? What does the word commander mean? It sounds very military. And of course, in my world, 23 years in the military, absolutely. We were trained 2 ranks up, because sadly, in combat, you lose people. And you can't turn around and go, right, can everybody just stop firing for a minute? Because, we need a new boss to come up. What you need is somebody to step into that gap and say, right, I'm taking control. Go and do this, go and do that. So it's not just about training your incident commanders, it's understanding, if that incident commander wasn't available for any reason at all, he or she might be on holiday, they might be on a course. Who steps into it? Who's the delegated replacement? So don't just have one, have 2 or 3 or 4. Commanding is about this concept of direction, ordering and controlling, having this authorization to go and do this. So you're not going to be questioned. If I turn around and say, go and get me one of these, people are going to go, are you allowed to tell me to do that? Actually, I'm IC. Therefore, you do as I say during the course of this incident. The IC in the incident response process is one of the most important roles. Absolutely one of the most important roles. They have leadership and management responsibility for the incident, and they report upwards to the group crisis management. They need to have delegated authority. So when you do your preparations, work with your legal teams and understand what an official DOA might look like. I don't need to be turning around and saying, system administrator, network administrator, go and do this. And they go, it takes 3 days to do that. I've got to get these forms signed. You need a delegation of authority that says, go and do that. And they do it straight away. So the IC role is incredibly important in this. They might also be the reporting link to the regulator. So when it comes down to things like communication, how does the regulator want to receive the information? Does it need to be encrypted? Does it need to be PDF? Does it need to be a form? Lots of things to be thought about. So when you do your preparation phase, it's not just about what does the IC need, it's understanding the outputs from the IC. Where do they go? How does it get there? What level of encryption does it need? And all of this needs to be planned out first. Because when you're up there, you're not going to get an engineer's visit if something goes wrong, right? So you're working in hostile environments. You can't sit there going, all right, yeah, okay, we need Dell support or Toshiba. They're going to send someone out. You won't get it. So you need to be able to act on your own initiative and have confidence in your ability. Not because you know what you're talking about, but because you're leading a team of people that are skilled in the areas that they run. You have to consider, as the incident commander, things like, do not get involved in the doing. You are there to lead the incident. You don't start, right, give me that, I'll start doing this, because then you're going to miss things. Okay, you are there to lead. You don't get involved in the doing. You have to set what's known as the span of control. So if you have a supervisor, how many resources can they effectively manage? Remember, you're in an incident response process. It is extremely stressful. The supervisors themselves are going to be stressed. So I would suggest no more than 1 to 5, one supervisor, 5 resources maximum. You're there to inspire people. You are there to empower people. Equally as important, no matter how you are inside, you need to stay calm. You need to have the ability to listen. You are not the expert in everything. So listen to the experts that you have in your team. When you do, you make the decisions, and you make those based upon assertions of fact, not assumptions by making stuff up. If you don't see the evidence or the facts in front of you, don't guess. And then you communicate. You communicate clearly, you indicate, you don't point at people, you indicate, and you turn around and you tell them exactly what you want to do. And equally as important, what do you want them to do when they finish? So go and do this, go and collect those 3 things, come back to me when you've done it. When you've finished, report to Bob. He needs help there. Don't use jargon, don't use slang, don't use, the old style of American radio. Hey, 10-4, we've got a 10-9 going on here, because people are going to go, oh, what? A 7-Eleven? No, that's a shop. All right. So don't use jargon or slang. You will also have to consider about the amount of pressure that you're going to have from the business leadership above. You need to have an understanding of your teams. You are the person responsible for their health and well-being and their safety. You might need to move really quickly. You will set the incident objectives, and therefore you've got to achieve them, and make sure that you're using the resources efficiently to achieve those objectives. It might not be the normal way of running the business, but you're not in a normal situation. In terms of the initial phase, understand how long this is going to be. This is the first part that says we are going to design and build the incident action plan. I'm going to give objectives to different teams. I want decisions to be made and report back to me. How long is the operational period going to be? I'm going to say it's going to be 12 hours. So at the end of 12 hours, I'm going to transfer command to the incoming incident commander. You've got questions to understand. What's been done since the incident was first identified between then and the IR team coming into play? It might be an hour or 2. So what have they done? They can't have just sat there going, well, the IR team's coming in. They'll deal with it. So what's been done since it was identified? Are there any areas that are still under active control by the adversary? Is it a fixed or a mobile one? Are you going to go to a single staging area and work from there? Or are you expected to relocate quickly because of fire, gas clouds, poison gas clouds, nuclear contamination? Are you in a building? If not, what's the weather going to be? Food and drink, sanitary. Do I need portaloos? Where's the nearest medical facility? Do I have casualties? If I do, where's the casualty area? And then the other thing, of course, as an incident commander, you need to have 2 go bags, one for up to 24 hours and a bigger, better one with more stuff in for up to 72 hours. You're not going to get the luxuries of things like showers, food. So take stuff with you. Been there, done that. Effective communications is incredibly important. You need to maintain situational awareness. You need to understand where this information is going to. So understand what's known as the information cascade and also the intelligence sharing. Staff during the course of the incident should only report to one supervisor and receive those work assignments from that. Otherwise, they're just going to get confused. In terms of the operational phase, you are there to lead all of these meetings. You work very closely with the operations section chief, the planning section chief, and the public information officer to ensure that everything is running along smoothly. And you are there to make decisions. Let them be the experts and tell you what's happening, and you make the decisions. That's what an incident commander does. When it comes down to the transfer of command at the end of your 12-hour shift, we need to transfer it effectively and as quickly as possible. Is anybody staying on? Where do we go from now? What's happening? Tell everybody that you have transferred command. So make sure that the incoming commander has a full briefing of what's happened, what you've done, and what's already been planned into their 12-hour period of operational command. Don't forget about evidence. Gone are the days when it's just something that you do. Nowadays, evidence is important because you're going to be providing stuff that might send people to prison. So you might need to also, as part of your preparation phase, understand what's the local law enforcement going to need from us. So you might have evidence bags, you might have harvest drives, you might have an understanding with the law enforcement of how to deal with evidence. Lastly, incident response is really, really stressful. It's high pressure. People don't normally work this way. And if you're there for several hours or days, your team and your team members and you may well need specialist support afterwards. So you might need to treat things like occupational therapists to help get your teams onto the list to say you might need counselling. I've arranged for you to go and get it. If you don't treat your teams well and you don't have a view of this afterwards, you will struggle to get volunteers moving forward. So just to summarize, I'm conscious I've run 3 minutes over. Incident command's not easy. It's a very lonely place to be because there's nobody to help you. You are the one person at the top of the pyramid. Actually, you're at the top of a pyramid that then funnels into the business and group crisis teams. So you are that one point of command. But you're there for a reason. You're there because you've been picked. Don't assume that you know everything. You are going to learn things every day. Mistakes happen. Learn from them, adapt the way you deal with it, and make sure it doesn't happen again. The last thing to recognise is that the International Society of Automation have now joined up with FEMA, and they actually have an incident commander credentialing process. I am happy to talk people through that outside of this. So we have 6 minutes. Dare I ask, are there any questions? Let me open up this. If you've got a question, if you want to raise your hand, hang on, it's on the chat. Oh, that's Beirut. Any questions? Has anybody been an incident commander? Nobody. No questions at all. Yeah, you're not wrong there, Frederick. You're not wrong. Oh, okay. Oh dear. In the NotPetya incident, Henrik, was that? And of course, that I mean that was a big incident where it ended up with Maersk Oil and Gas being sold off to Henrik. Was it Total, French company? Okay, cool. Um, so any questions at all? I am more than happy to speak to people outside of this if people are less confident about asking questions. As I said, if you want to get in touch with myself or the Readynez team, by all means do so. I'm on LinkedIn, so connect with me if you want to. If there are no further questions, I will. Beirut, did you want to quickly go through the? So, question here is any tips for raising awareness around management that IR is not optional? The easiest way that I found to do it is to take them through a scenario that's occurred before. To give you an example, I am working with a large energy company and they said it's not really it doesn't affect us. And I turned around to them, I said, okay, here's an incident that's occurred before in the energy industry. Forget, would you have stopped it if it occurred? Would you have spotted it happening on your networks? And of course, when they realized, when we walked them through it, they realized we wouldn't have even seen it, let alone being able to get our arms around it and stop it spreading. So I think these days, awareness that it's not an optional thing it is being educated into the senior management. But not only that, it's also something that because of things like the NIS regulations across the EU, it's not optional now because they are regulated. Hope that answers the question. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is to help them understand the definition of accountability. You know, everybody does RACI charts of responsibility, accountability, consulted and informed. And the way I put it to boards when I'm giving C-suite briefings is the responsible people get the jobs done. The accountable person is the person that ends up in court if they don't. Right? So make sure that the seriousness is put into them of if you don't do incident response effectively, it's not just that you might lose your job, you might lose the company. So it's about looking at scenarios from before and said, how would we have even spotted that? Let alone now, let's talk through how would we have dealt with it. Good question, though. You're welcome. Sorry, I'm answering questions in the chat. If anyone's wondering why I'm talking sort of weirdly, I'm actually talking through the meeting chat. 2 minutes left. Any last questions? One of the other things around the Readynez, obviously, is an offering around unlimited training. Beirut, if you're still on, did you want to quickly give a minute on this?
Yes, I can do. Hello, everyone. Yeah, unlimited training. Basically, you can go as many courses you want. Unlimited. We have two road, you can say. One is for security, and the other one is for Microsoft training, and 60 plus courses. So, yeah, that's basically it.
Okay. Excellent. And these are along defined learning pathways. So it's not just a case of I'm going to go and do a course. It will also help you identify that if you do a particular course, what's the next logical step? So with that in mind, it is now 29 minutes past the hour. We've been going a full hour. If there are no final questions, hang on, just firing things up. If there are no more questions at all, then thank you very much for attending. It's been great to see so many people on. I think at the maximum point there was something like 37, 38 people on. As I say, connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to know more about it. I believe, Beiruz, that the recording will be made available for people as well.
Yes, we will
Okay,
send out an
excellent.
email about it.
Perfect. And the last part, of course, is please can you produce feedback when you're asked about it? There's a link in the presentation. And from me, thank you very much for attending. And hopefully everybody's picked up one or two tips.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you very much indeed, guys.